Hey guys, Jay here with Word of Advice TV, and in today's video I would like to go over 5 most common furnace problems and how to fix them. And I'm actually going to be showing the scenarios or the symptoms of what the furnace will be doing or not doing when you're experiencing that problem. So let's go ahead and take my top door off here. We will need to see what's going on. So right now, my thermostat upstairs is set to heat, and I have the temperature bumped up. So the furnace should be running, but I have the power switch off at the moment. And just 2 things I want to point out before we begin. The first one is, before you touch your power switch at all, if your furnace is not working or if it's not working right, before you reset the power to your furnace, which I'll be doing throughout the video, the first thing you want to do is look at your control board and find the LED error code light. Most furnaces will have this error light on them. It's just a little LED light that's either green or red. Oftentimes there's going to be a sight glass on the door, so you don't even have to take the door off to see what it's blinking. And just write down or remember which code it is blinking. Usually it'll have short blinks and it'll have long blinks. So just count those blinks and write them down. For example, there will be 2 short blinks, blink, blink, pause, and then there will be 3 long blinks. 1, 2, 3. Then it'll be a long pause, and then it'll start over. It'll show that code over and over and over again. So what happens is, when you reset the power to your furnace, that little error code that's blinking, it gets reset or cleared out. And if it's an intermittent problem, then chances are your furnace might start up and run fine for a little bit, and you're not going to know what the problem was because you just cleared that code out. So before you clear anything out, check that out. Write it down, just in case the furnace will not repeat that same problem for a while, only to bite you in the butt later on. So number 1 is to check the error code before you flip the power switch on and off, or you turn your circuit breaker for your furnace on and off. And number 2 is that I will be referencing other videos in this video, and I'll have links in the description of all the videos that I'll be referencing just in case you need them. And one of them is about the error codes. So if you're not sure what to look for, how to determine what they mean, and where to find the chart that explains everything, I have a video where I explain all of that, and I won't go into details in this video. It's called Furnace Not Heating, Where to Start, or something like that. I'll have a link in the description. Anyways, let's begin. So the very first problem that we're going to go over is a dirty flame sensor. That's the champion of all furnace problems. That one happens the most out of all the furnace problems. And let's just see what that will look like. Let's turn my furnace on. I also have a video called Furnace Sequence of Operation, which really helps. And in that video, I go step by step by step, and I explain in which sequence the furnace fires up. If you want to watch that, it's going to be in the description as well. So here's the igniter that's glowing. The flames just lit. And about 3 or 4 seconds later, they just go out. So that's the symptom of a dirty flame sensor. This is the most common and also the most easiest thing to fix. So whenever you see your furnace light like that, everything seems normal. It starts up normally. If the flames light, and then it only lasts for about 3 seconds, that is almost guaranteed to be a flame sensor issue. And what will happen is the furnace will typically try again 3 to 5 times. It'll keep trying to light, and once it fails, it'll go into a lockout. So for 3 hours, the furnace will just sit there and do absolutely nothing, and in 3 hours, it'll start back up and try again. So if your furnace is sitting there and doing nothing, the first thing you can try doing is just flipping the power switch off for about 5 seconds and turning it back on and see what the furnace does. And if you see it doing what I'm showing you right now, where it'll light for about 3 seconds and then go off, then most likely all you have to do is just clean your flame sensor and you'll be good. So one more time, the flames just lit. It was about 4 seconds, they went right out. So let's go ahead and show you how to clean the flame sensor now. I'll turn the power off. And anytime you're reaching into the furnace and touching things, you should have the power off, because there are electrical connections that could shock you if you touch them accidentally. So the flame sensor is going to be somewhere by the burners, in front of the burners. So right here I have my burners. By the way, I also have a video where I talk about all the furnace components, what they are and what they do. So if you're not sure what different names of different components are, check that video out. So we have an igniter on this side. That's the thing that was glowing bright orange. Usually the flame sensor will be on the opposite side of the igniter. So if my igniter is here, the flame sensor is going to be over here. In my case, it's pretty easy to access it. In some furnaces, it's actually kind of hard to get to. I have a video on more about flame sensors and more about that issue as well, and how they work and all of that. So if you want a more detailed video on the flame sensor, you could look at that. In this video, I'm just going to show you how to clean it. Usually the flame sensor is held in there just by a 1/4-inch screw. And this is what it looks like. The flame sensor is just a metal rod. It can be bent into different positions. It could be like a 45-degree bend, or it can just be a straight rod altogether. And with time, buildup starts to form on the flame sensor, and that's what prevents it from actually sensing the flame. And if it doesn't sense the flame, it turns the gas valve off and the flames go out. So that's what we're seeing. The flames come on for 3 seconds and then they turn right off. To remedy this, all you have to do is simply clean the flame sensor with a Scotch-Brite pad. Even a dishwashing scrubby should work. So with a scrubby like this, just press down real firm and clean that whole metal rod so that it starts to shine. Get all that buildup off of it. And that should solve your problem. If it doesn't, then you may need to clean your burners. I have a video on that as well. Or just watch my flame sensor troubleshooting video where I go into a lot more detail about this problem. So as you can see, most of that buildup is gone. I cleaned it all off. And now we can put my flame sensor back in. Usually there's only one screw hole, so you can't put it in incorrectly. It's always going to be facing the right direction. Once in a long time you do have to replace it, but usually cleaning it is enough. There's one wire that goes to it, and I'll do a little close-up right here and show you where it goes in. So I plug it back in. On my furnace, it just goes right over here. And it ends up right in front of the burner. And then with a 1/4-inch screw, I just tighten it down. So after you get the flame sensor cleaned, you should be able to turn your furnace power switch back on, and the flames should turn on for a lot longer than just 3 seconds. Your furnace should just get right back up and running. So there's my igniter, starting to glow. There's my flames. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and the flames are just going to stay on. I'm going to go ahead and turn my power switch off before my furnace gets too hot. And let's move on to problem number 2. And problem number 2 is not as common as the flame sensor, but it also is surprisingly one of the most common problems, ranking number 2, and that is a dirty furnace filter. You'd be surprised how often I come to a house that simply has a dirty furnace filter, and that's the only problem. So the furnace filter, the symptom of that, I can't really simulate it, but basically what happens is the furnace is just simply not going to keep up in most cases. So for example, you have your furnace set to 72, but it's only getting to about 70 degrees and no higher. If that keeps happening to you and you haven't replaced your filter in a long time, then I would recommend the first thing you do is just try replacing the furnace filter, and that may be the only problem that you're experiencing. So basically what happens is most furnaces will have a high limit switch or a fan limit switch, which looks like this guy right here, just a black box, or it can be a little cylinder shaped or a round shaped silver looking disc that's in there. That's the high limit. And the function of the high limit is to turn the furnace off if it's getting too hot in there. And one of the reasons it'll get too hot is because the furnace filter is plugged and there's not enough airflow going past the heat exchanger. If there's not enough airflow, then the furnace will start to overheat slowly. Once it overheats to a certain point, the flames will shut off and the fan will stay on to cool the furnace off. And of course, the dirtier your filter is, the more often that will happen. And just like the flame sensor, if this happens 3 to 5 times in a row during one heating cycle, that thing will cause the furnace to go into a lockout. So for 3 hours, the furnace will just sit there and do absolutely nothing. Sometimes that is not very noticeable. If it's not very cold outside, you might not even notice that the furnace went into a lockout and it just sat there for 3 hours doing nothing. Or maybe the furnace blower motor was on the whole time. Some furnaces will do that. That masks it as well. So it seems like the fan is running, something is happening, but the burners are not on. So once again, like I was saying, if it's not very cold outside, you might not notice it right away, but once it gets colder outside, that will become noticeable and your temperatures in the house will start to drop. So if your furnace is not keeping up, there's a good chance that you simply have a dirty furnace filter. Once you replace that, that should solve your problem. I also have a video where I talk all about the furnace filters. If you have more questions about these filters, how often you should replace them, which filters you should use, where they can be found, why a filter is needed, all of those questions I answer in that video. So if you're interested, check that video out. So that's the furnace filter. The most common problem, number 2, after the flame sensor. And coming in third place is a bad inducer motor, which is this guy right here. And the symptoms of that are actually fairly simple. Usually, if you're experiencing that problem, you have your thermostat set to heat, temperature bumped up. A lot of times your control board will be blinking a pressure switch open code, and your furnace will be doing absolutely nothing. So, for example, if we turn our power on, my thermostat is calling for heating, and this is what happens. I actually heard a little click. So the control board actually sent power to the inducer motor, judging by that click. If you have a multimeter, you can check if it has power. I also have a video where I talk completely about the inducer motor, how to troubleshoot it with and without a meter. So if you want more details on that, check out that video. But anyways, if your inducer motor is getting power and it's not starting, then the inducer motor is simply bad, or there's something stuck in it, like a bird or some bird nesting or stuff like that. A dead giveaway of a bad inducer motor though is if you put your hand on it. So let's say your thermostat is set to heat, it's supposed to be running but it's not. If you go down to the furnace, take the door off and put your hand on the inducer motor, if it's really hot, almost guaranteed that that inducer motor is bad, or there's something stuck in the blower wheel inside. So if you put your hand on the inducer motor and it's super hot, your furnace is doing nothing, then your problem is with the inducer motor. But if you do think that your inducer motor is the one that's the problem and you're about to replace it, I would recommend watching my video about the inducer motor and troubleshooting it a little bit before you come to that final conclusion, because maybe, like I was saying, something is simply stuck in that blower wheel. And once you replace your inducer motor, you should be right back in business. So let's turn our power switch back on and move on to problem number 4. The most common problem number 4, in 4th place, is a bad blower motor. So let's see an example of a bad blower motor. A lot of times this will be accompanied by a burnt plastic smell or a burnt electric smell all throughout the house. You're probably going to smell it. So oftentimes when I come into a person's house and they tell me they smell a burnt electrical smell, it's almost every time that the blower motor is bad. So this is what it'll look like. If you cycle the power to your furnace, what happens is the burners will come on, your inducer motor is running, everything's fine, and your blower motor should come on shortly after the burners light. So about 20 or 30 seconds after the burners light, your blower motor should be coming on. But if your blower motor is bad, then of course it's not going to come on. You might hear it hum a little bit if it's trying to start, but it won't if it's bad. And what happens is that temperature limit that senses the temperature inside the furnace, it can sense that the furnace is getting too hot because the blower motor is not turning on at all. And once that limit switch trips, the flames will extinguish and the furnace will wait until it cools off and that switch closes back up before it'll try again. So let's just see an example of that. My blower motor is not going to come on right now. The furnace has been on for about 1 minute. So my guess is that pretty soon that limit switch will trip and cause the burners to come off. So by now, my blower motor should have came on like at least 30 seconds ago. So if your burners are on for a minute or longer and your blower motor is not coming on, then there's a good chance that that blower motor is bad. So my furnace has been on for a while. I don't want to fry my heat exchanger too much, so I'll go ahead and turn the power off. Another thing you can look for if you have a bad blower motor is you can take that bottom door off on your furnace, and your blower motor is typically going to be on the right side, but it can be on the left as well. Reach in there carefully, and of course your power should be off to the furnace, and carefully just grab the motor and just feel it on the sides, just like the inducer motor. If it's super hot, then most likely you're going to have to replace that whole blower motor. And I have a video of where I replaced mine on this furnace, so if you need help with that, you can watch that video. But there is a chance that the control board is simply not sending power to the blower motor, and that's what's causing it not to turn on. I have a video for that case as well, how you can tell if it's the board that's the problem or if it's the motor that's the problem. But if your blower motor is really hot, that means it is getting power, and you for sure will have to end up replacing it. So if your blower motor was the problem, after you replace it, you should be able to turn your furnace back on, and everything should work correctly. So let's just see what the correct sequence of operation will be with it working normally. So the inducer motor always comes on first, and shortly after, the igniter will start to glow. Then the gas valve opens, all the flames ignite, or all the burners light. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 43, 44, 45, 46. So it took about 45 seconds for my blower motor to come on. And depending on what furnace you have, your blower motor may come on after 20 seconds, 30 seconds, 45 seconds. It depends what your control board is set to. There's a little timer that decides when the blower motor should come on. So as you can see, in 45 seconds, my blower motor came on, and when it wasn't working, the burners were on, in my example, for about 2 minutes, and the blower motor never came on. And of course that switch will trip, and then the gas valve will turn off, the lights will go out until the furnace cools back off. And problem number 5 is a bad control board. So on my furnace, it's this guy right here. They can look differently on different furnaces, but if you have a bad control board, there's a variety of different problems that can happen from that. One of them, like I mentioned previously, is that it will not send power to a component when it should be sending power to it. So for example, the board might not be sending power to the blower motor to turn it on, and that's why your furnace is overheating. Other times, I've seen it not send power to the igniter when it should be. So the inducer motor will come on, the pressure switches will close, but the igniter never starts to glow. It never gets power. Sometimes I've seen it not send power to the inducer motor, so your thermostat is set to heat, but nothing happens. I've also seen control boards that turn on both the air conditioner and the furnace at the same time. Of course, that's a problem, and most often that's caused by a bad control board. Usually, whenever I come across bad boards, most of the time it's because it's not sending power to a component, and usually that'll be the inducer motor. So if the control board, long story short, you kind of do need a meter to check control boards to verify. But long story short, if the control board is getting power into it, but it's not sending power out, then that control board is bad. And I have a video on how to check the control board, how to troubleshoot it with a meter. So if you would like, you could watch that video for more information. And if you get lucky, sometimes the control board itself will blink an error code saying that the board is defective and needs to be replaced. In that case, you for sure need to replace that control board. Well guys, and that is all I had. I hope you found this video useful, and if you're a technician watching this and you have any further suggestions or tips to add about those 5 problems, or if you have any corrections to what I've said, we would love to hear your insight in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching this video. Don't forget to mash the like button on the way out, and I'll see you next time. And if you're still here and not in the comment section below, I just recently found out that my electric toothbrush is not waterproof. I was shocked.